and welcome to Moments with Melinda. I am your host, Melinda Moulton. And today I am so honored to be speaking with Jim Lockridge. Jim, how are you?
Oh, I'm good.
I'm so glad to have you with me. Jim and I go way back. I think we could say almost 30 years, probably.
Way
Yeah.
back.
So I'm just so thrilled to have you with me this morning. Let me tell my viewers a little bit about you, Jim. Jim Lockridge has spent 30 years focused on the Vermont music scene. He co-founded the nonprofit organization Big Heavy World in Burlington, and he is the executive director and the public face of the organization. Right?
That's correct.
Yes, sir. So we're going to dig deep into you and Big Heavy World. But let's start at the beginning, Jim. Tell us a bit about your childhood, where you grew up, and where your love of music came from.
Boy, I grew up in a town called Kailua on the island of Oahu in Hawaii. And yeah, until late teenage years, I ended up living in a few towns in Vermont where my mother was from. So Manchester, Bennington, Springfield, and eventually Burlington, where I went to UVM. I grew up barefoot and spending a lot of time in the ocean. And it's a whole other kind of wavelength in Hawaii, especially in the country town that I came from, um, opposite from the big city.
So what brought your parents back to Vermont from Hawaii to Vermont? That's a big shift. What inspired that move?
Well, my mother was born in Springfield, and all my life I would spend summers on the farm she grew up in with her parents. So I had this exposure to Vermont and the seasons and gardening and the forest and smell of wood smoke and we'd bounce over to the grandparents for the holidays and see snow. So I was kind of raised with Vermont in me from the start, and uh, and tough to say how we ended up back on the mainland. Um, I ended up going to UVM, and then calling Burlington home for the last 30 something years.
Right. And I'm so grateful. We're all so grateful for that. So talk to us a little bit about your love of music. Where did that come from? Where did your passion for music come from? And do you play an instrument?
I don't play an instrument, and I play the throttle. Um,
And is that the throttle of your motorcycle?
yeah, I have very short pipes. Um, let's see. I hate to I hate to say this, but I'm probably going to get a little sort of philosophical, but music from it's not like I'm drawn to a particular genre or style or aesthetic. My interest is in people, and music is this really complete form of expression for everybody, for all of us as humans. And because it's such a full-throated, you know, um, avenue for our humanity, it's compelling to me. It's got so many dimensions from lyrics to melody. It just goes on and on how much of the human experience you can jam into music. And so I relate to music that way. And along with that, music in the real world has been a, I call it a platform, the architecture of my being able to put some energy into what I have to offer for strengthening community or uh, giving young people confidence to be an active part of their community, to help people realize earlier in life rather than later that they have a role to play in change making. And I'm sort of following my own lead as having been an older person before I realized that maybe individual opinions can matter, when they're informed and thoughtful, and getting over the hurdle of being bold enough to put yourself into the stream of policy making and resourcing and stuff is something that not we aren't born into realizing that we have that opportunity. So music and Big Heavy World gives me that chance.
Well, music also defines civilization. So we're going to move into Big Heavy World in a minute, but give me one of your most inspirational music moments that you experienced here in Vermont?
Oh, um,
And
uh,
these are not gotcha questions. I just want to hear, I really want to hear from you on these answers.
way back when Club Toast was around, I have the fondest memories of being at concerts like Strange Folk with my sweetie before we were married. And also, you know, Big Heavy World is this organization that for so long has been staffed by volunteers, people with just love in their heart for music in their community. And uh, in the early days of Big Heavy World, people came together from many different directions, including technology. So using emerging technology to stream Vermont music in partnership with very large national organizations that helped bring these new internet streams to the world in the 90s. Um, is I have fond memories of that era. It was very formative and it gave us all a lot of optimism.
Very cool. Yes, it did. Yes, it did. Boy, what a world we're living in now. So let's move on to Big Heavy World because this really has been your life's work. Just tell us a little bit about this organization.
Well, we started in 1996 as a online as a World Wide Web guide to musicians in our area. And musicians were bringing us press kits. We were turning them into an encyclopedia of local music on the internet, which at the time was brand new to the public. It was the very first car commercials with URLs were appearing on TV, and UVM was hosting workshops to tell people what the internet is, and what browsers were. So it was all very new back then, which sounds kind of antique to say now, but um, as these press kits arrived, they included music, and this music stacked higher and higher and higher. And we realized eventually that we had created inadvertently this responsibility to this aspect of Vermont's culture. And our archive was formalized. Our interest in serving musicians broadened to become what we eventually recognized as an independent music development office, doing what we can in every direction. That was fun for us to give our music community, a better economic chance and help bring it together so that the social capital would build and the music community could support itself as well.
So for my viewers, we're talking to Jim Lockridge, who is the founder and executive director of Big Heavy World. And I encourage you to go to the Big Heavy World website, bigheavyworld.com. It's an extraordinary website. It truly is. So, this is a 30-year organization. Talk to us about where it is now and some of the new projects that you're working on, Jim.
I'd say, boy, for the last few years, we've been very purposeful about gathering the material evidence of the history of music in Vermont, with each artifact being an opportunity to tell a story about a different facet of the music community. We've worked with different partners and been supported very generously by different philanthropic interests that have allowed us to bring a very meaningful collection of artifacts together, from Big Joe Burrell saxophones to Pete Sutherland's fiddle. We are stewarding the office door to 242 Main until we can return it to a new youth-led cultural space in the city. We've just been given so generously the original Club Toast sign. We're caring for the Hunts sign that hung over the stage. So we've become this nucleus or this attractor for these aspects of Vermont's music history, not because there's value in these things, but because they give us the license to explain to everybody how vibrant and talented and deep this aspect of Vermont's culture is.
So where do people see the archives online, or is there an actual physical space?
There's a physical space at 4 Howard Street, and at 6 p.m. every Wednesday, the doors are open. The volunteer crew is there every week, preparing to host a live music broadcast with Vermont bands from all over the state, and that's when we get the work done.
That's outstanding. So now you were also instrumental in 242 Main program at Memorial Auditorium. And I want you to talk to us very briefly about this program. I know it's passionate for you, and your thoughts on the proposed planning for what will be a very exciting revitalization of the Memorial Auditorium project. Talk to us about
Well,
that, Jim.
I I have no claim whatsoever to being a part of the management or the vision for 242 Main in its official existence before it was closed.
But you're an
Uh,
advocate. You're a huge
that's right.
advocate. Yes, tell us why.
My my role is to remind everybody how important it is as a society, as a city government, to support every generation among us. And there was a time in Burlington's history as a city where the city itself, under the leadership of Bernie Sanders when he was mayor, served youth with a youth office, created a space that was programmed by youth, that gave them an opportunity to speak to one another, to encourage each other, to represent their values to each other, and to do that through creative platforms like music, among other things. And that was a necessary resource for our community. And in more recent years, this resource was neglected, it was defunded, the management was diluted and given other tasks. It lost responsible oversight, and eventually, through the neglect of the building itself, was closed as Memorial Auditorium was closed. And all of that was avoidable, regrettable, and said something about the quality of uh, the leadership of the city in relation to youth. And I say that with disappointment in my voice, obviously, but also because when you recognize a problem, you can solve it. And if you decide that a problem is truly actually a challenge, then you can rise to it with some sense of positivity. And I'd like to think that that's where we're at, that people who have responsibility for everybody in our community include the youth in that sense of responsibility, and will pursue the restoration of some kind of resource similar to 242 Main.
And I think it will happen. I think under the folks that are looking at Memorial, I think it'll happen. I really truly do. I think they're really focused on this. Um, so you have been very vocal about funding for the arts in general from the city of Burlington, and you've called it a dereliction of duty. Is this part of it, or is there another piece that you feel needs to be addressed?
Well, I have so many experiences where I bump into ways of thinking and ways of doing things that are inherited from one generation to another, and they just don't change, and they need to grow like we do as people. And we find these sort of systemic pre predilections materializing in projects where, and this is just an example, we'll say, let's capture a portion of the budget of a city infrastructure project and dedicate it to the arts. And you'll find that the language that defines that program omits anything related to music. It's not inclusive of all art forms. It steers towards visual arts and something related to architecture and physical. And that would be fine if there were balance and there were a purposeful sense of equity and other revenue beyond this monopoly was applied to being fair to the arts. And it's these traditional
Yeah.
legacy modes of thought that we can't seem to punch through purposefully, and we should. Another example is when the state steers federal support into art spaces, but defines the region for that support to be downtowns where it's impractical for musicians to practice loudly in a densely populated district. And so an art form is left out of the thought process. And that is my experience in Vermont. And I want to translate that into a more generalized, innate, natural, organically flowing sense of uh, being there in government to be fair to everybody. But that takes so much more purpose than people are used to giving. And that's why, when you say something like this with such plain language, the hope it isn't that there's a sense of critique, but rather there's a sense of opportunity.
Yeah, here. Well, it's also true that I think as we bring youth into these positions, things change. I mean, film is not, deeply supported either, and there's other dance and things like that. So bravo to you on that, on being outspoken about this. So again, I want to tell my viewers we're talking with Jim Lockridge, who's the executive director of Big Heavy World. Visit their website, bigheavyworld.com. So on your website, Jim, you have you have a Vermont music library. You also have hundreds of bands listed on your band guide, and bands can actually sign up on your website. And you also have a fabulous collection of Vermont music videos, which are outstanding. Talk to us a little bit about those projects. They're just phenomenal. Share a little bit about it.
Boy, well, the videos are fun because, when musical artists bring other art forms to bear, and, there's this union of fun stuff, in a video, it's you get a peek at so many different ways of being creative. And that's a joy for me to come across videos that we can throw up there for everybody to enjoy. The library has been growing for years and years and years. I described how it began as we received press kits and starting in 1996. And at this point, our music archive has roughly 5,000 CDs in it by Vermont artists. Along the way, we had the blessing of working with photographer Matthew Thorson to, with him, co-curate 115 images, and with support from 7 Days, get them framed with sponsorship, and tour the state with Matthew talking and us recording his interpretation and his narrative of taking each photo with each of these artists. They're all portraits of Vermont bands from the 90s in black and white. So that's a part of the archive.
How do my viewers see that? How do my viewers get to experience that? By going to the website?
All of those images and the audio is on the website. Yes.
Perfect. Bigheavyworld.com, folks. You got to visit. Yep. Continue
We've
on, Jim. I'm sorry.
we've had fun bringing older music zines to the website in PDF form. You'll find all of the Good Citizens there, and some others, Rapid Fire, Punk Rock Magazine. And we have a smaller set of videos and vinyl. But because of when the organization started, CDs are the dominant media format. And we've captured a large swath of music from Vermont over the last 30 years. So, I think he asked us what our projects are these days, and I'm investigating whether there might be a community partner out there, a college campus, for instance, that has an interest in becoming the steward of this material archive as we continue to grow it. I reflect on the Flanders collection at Middlebury, and I think that,
Just gonna say Middlebury. I was just,
yeah,
have you approached them?
Started a conversation and
Good.
haven't pulled hard on that thread yet.
So another great project that you've done over the years is the Rocket Shop. And I think I've been a guest on your show. I think Patricia Brain was the interviewer. Are you still doing the Rocket Shop? And those
We
shows are up on your website.
we sure are. Yeah, you'll
Yeah,
find the podcast there. It's I
yeah,
think 3 weeks a month we have guests on, and
great.
you'll find the podcast on the website. And there's been, I'm going to say, at least 800 artists or bands as guests there, at
Stand.
least.
Then you have the Radiator, and then the Vermont Music Far Wide Project. That's bringing, I believe, music into more rural environments, towns, correct?
Well, Verm- our museum started out as an exhibit in the State Historical Society's, uh, they call it the local history gallery, the space inside the museum in Montpelier. And we curated an exhibit there that I have to say how wonderful a pleasure it was to work with the staff there and to have so much enthusiasm surrounding the topic and the materials we brought in. But we filled this room with, the artifacts that became the seed of our museum. So now those artifacts and several years of collecting later, we have our tiny museum of Vermont music history that fills half of our office space, which is a light industrial space in the Howard space.
I, I just went on the Vermont Historical Society's board. So
Oh,
I'm,
wonderful.
yeah, so I'll be able to share this video with them and talk to them about your collaboration. So in 2011, the Vermont State Legislature honored Big Heavy World with a concurrent House resolution. How'd that make you feel, my friend?
Oh, I
You've
it
received a lot of awards, but again, when you go down to the legislature and they all stand up and honor your work from your peers, it's pretty special, isn't it?
it matters. And I think less to me and more to all Vermonters in the sense that if our legislature recognizes work supporting an art form in Vermont, it means that art form means something. And that's a message that we just have to be persistent with because we have to help people understand that art deserves support and different art forms need different kinds of support
So
and inclusion.
Jim, I have a suggestion. I'm going to throw this out to you. I would love to collaborate with you with a joint co-author essay commentary for Digger on this issue. And I know that Vermont Business Magazine will also print it. Would you be willing to do that with me?
Oh, anytime,
Okay, let's do
anytime.
that. We'll get right on that. So for my viewers, Big Heavy World is a nonprofit. And anyone who wishes to support this work of preserving, sharing, creating, celebrating, and supporting Vermont music can go to thebigheavyworld.com and donate right there on the website. And it is a tax-deductible donation. So my viewers can get involved as volunteers. They can get involved to support it. They can get involved by sharing the fact that they're a band, that they're a music entity. Are there other ways that my viewers can get involved in the organization, Jim?
I want to answer that question directly, but it's so important to me that a viewer interested in what you and I are talking about today speak up to their neighbors, to their town government, to just say something out loud that says, hey, the arts enrich us, the arts uplift us, the arts give us reasons to get up in the morning. The arts give us a quality of life we wouldn't have without them. And just saying that out loud can help move Vermont in a very positive direction. Big Heavy World is doing its part. We're a tiny little grassroots organization. We're just some volunteers doing this stuff, and it's if to be, I guess that's I'll leave the response there because people just caring in general is enough for us.
Well,
And
I hear you, and your passion and your energy and your love of this work is just it's palpable, Jim. Now, you recently moved to Arizona to be closer to your daughter who's in school out there, and your parents live, a few hours away, but you're still as involved as ever in your work back here. And it's as if you're here because you work remotely, correct?
That's correct. And I always have.
So, yeah, but you're not physically in Burlington. Do you get back from time to time?
I expect to.
Okay, good.
Um, yeah,
Next time you get back,
it'll be a joy
we're
to
gonna
be back.
we're gonna get together. So now, as we finish up this interview, I want to talk to you a little bit about your work. You have worked and supported our youth for your entire life, Jim. I mean, you've really been involved in helping to lift our youth up um, with Big Heavy World and with the project at Memorial Auditorium. What would your words of wisdom be for our youth as they try to navigate this new world that we are living in and the world that we're leaving them?
Boy, if we're asking for words, like I know that experiences are what inform young people. And my words are just words,
But
but
your words are so powerful, Jim. Your words are so
well,
powerful. Don't diminish. Oh,
the
please
most
speak on.
thank you. The most important thing that I would want a young person to realize as soon as they have the capacity to understand this is that they have value in this world, that the reason, the vision, the creative spirit that they embody is meaningful to other people, to society as a whole, and to the future, and that they should have no hesitation to put that into the world, to put themselves into the world. And, we all have to first recognize our values and then live them. So if you start young, understanding for yourself what matters to you so that your choices can come from that place and you can grow into who you're meant to be. I just wish it on you to discover this early in life and, to seek it. So that's what I'd say.
It's so beautiful, Jim. Well, thank you so much. We're coming to the end of my interview with you. Is there anything that you want to share with my viewers before we sign off? And before I do, I want to remind you all again, this is your assignment. You were to go online and look at bigheavyworld.com. It's a phenomenal. You could be lost in this website for days, and the music is extraordinary. So I really encourage you to do that. Any words of wisdom you'd like to offer me or my viewers before we say goodbye, adieu, my friend?
Well, I'm grateful for the chance to say thank you to the generations and generations of people, young and old, who have volunteered at Big Heavy World, because everything that exists there is because of just a spectrum of Vermonters who cared like I do about, other Vermonters and art and music. And so whatever there is to be appreciated about Big Heavy World, it owes itself to, hundreds of people who have cared to begin with. And thank you for this chance to talk about stuff. It's such a pleasure.
Well, you're one of, I've just loved you for so many years, and you're one of the most humble and, wise, evolved, enlightened humans in my life. And you've done so much for the state and so much for music in Vermont. And so it's an honor to interview you and let my viewers get to know you. And I wish you well, Jim. I'll reach out to you about doing this co-authoring this essay with me. And when you get back to Burlington, we've got the Burlington History and Culture Center. You're going to be on my advisory council. So when you get back to Burlington or just from far away, I'm not going anywhere, friend. You're going to be hearing a lot from me.
Oh, I love this.
Yeah, I
And
love
thank
it.
you,
So you take care, my friend. Stay well, and we'll be in touch soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
To my viewers, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you again for a few moments.